Hello friends, and welcome to the Hanged Man in the Moon. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm pleased to meet you. If you've been here before, thank you for returning. I'm truly honored. Friends, this is part 3 of a 3-part interview with Christine Payne-Towler, a brilliant understander and speaker on continental European esoterica and the Tarot. And in this part, we are going to be diving into working with the deck itself. How do we enter into the world of the Tarot of the Holy Light? But I highly recommend, if you have not seen parts 1 or 2 of this interview, to go check those out first. So I will put cards up here for the first part of the video for you to hop on over to that. Start with part 1, go to part 2, then move on to part 3. And here we are in part 3. Without further ado, let me bring Christine Payne-Towler back to us. We're back. Hello. Thank you very much for coming back, Christine. I had just asked how you would suggest a person enter into and begin learning your deck for themselves. In addition to, of course, reading the book, getting the deck, what are the first steps you would suggest to a person?
I'm a very big fan of taking the deck personally, and the best way to do that is to take the trumps out, separate in their little sections, signs, planets, elements, and make up a picture of your astrology chart on a nice big table or something where you've got some space, so that you could see how the signs wrap around from your ascendant, and then you could see how the planets drop in, so that you could read those pairs, planet sign, and then begin to try and integrate where those fall in relation to each other, and maybe some of the conversations they're having. Bring whatever you know from your own astrology to the tarot, and then you bring what you're learning to the astrology. Now, on the other hand, the other half of this is to keep a journal. And I suggest people could do their version of this. I suggest when you get up in the morning, if your head is empty, that's a great time to shuffle the deck for a few minutes and just throw a few cards out. And then make no judgment. Then come back at the end of the day and ask yourself, why did I get these cards? And then you write that in your journal. Over
Do you
time,
have a preference for 1, 2, 3?
Oh no, each person, it depends on how your own mind works. I like 3.
Yeah, 3 is my favorite.
Yeah, part of my Orientalism, I guess.
Yeah.
But I always like thesis, antithesis, synthesis. That makes sense for me as a Libra. So a 3-card reading is like so flexible, right? Past, present, future, his, hers, theirs, subconscious, conscious, superconscious. I mean, but it's whatever you're going to do, write it down. You know, here's the spread I'm using. Here's what I got, and then at the end of the day, why did I get this? And one of the things you'll realize is that some people, their cards tend to comment on the past. So be digesting what happened yesterday or last week, or in, pivotal times of our past history. Some people find that their cards run a day or two ahead, and so they can't completely make sense of it on the day that they throw the cards. But in hindsight, 2 days later, it's totally obvious. So part of what you're learning here is what time zone you think in. For some people, it's exactly today. These cards are about today, and it's obvious it's today. And every day when I come home, it's just like clockwork. And so you begin to get a sense of how the cards are talking to you. This is very much like the old astrologers did. They didn't, for thousands of years, we didn't do interpretive astrology. We paid attention to what went on in the heavens, and we paid attention to what happened immediately afterwards on the earth. And we just kept records. That's all we did. Then over time, those patterns emerged. And we learned to differentiate, wow, a trine aspect is more harmonious than a square aspect. Or, you know, and these things get into different zones in relation to each other. They affect each other in certain ways. I mean, that took a long, long time of, or I guess maybe somebody knew it, but it didn't become universal for a long time because we keep bombing ourselves back to the Stone Age, I guess. So in that arc of collective development, I mean, you're recapitulating that as an individual. You know, you're coming to the cards that are 500-600 years old. You're coming to the astrological values that are thousands of years old. You're bringing your current self. And you have many stages in the past, you have other stages that you're going to go through in the future. So, you know, on a slider, find out where you stand in this matrix of time and space. And then, you know, it takes almost a year to see every card.
Gotcha.
Maybe for some people, if they're not really steady with this, it will take them longer. But so you can't learn a deck in an intimate way really fast. You can learn the system, but you still have to use it. So this journal work allows you, even if you don't have other people to trap into tarot readings like I did for years, you can at least do something with yourself. Yeah, quick, can we throw cards? Let's throw cards about that. You know, I mean, my friends got trained within the first few years. Go to Christine if you want to find out what's the astrology, what are the cards. You can ask her because she's excited about that stuff. So, you know, get excited. You have to get excited about learning. And, you know, learning them together is at the beginning seems harder, but in the end, it makes much more sense. It opens up what a deck is. You know, this is what I'm saying. With the outline that it has, 22 plus 40 plus 16, you know, it's making specific references with those particular numbers. And so learning how to work in that set of references is part of what you're doing. Is not just see the modern tarot is very much about free associating, and I have trouble, frankly, figuring out whether the reader is reading themselves or just riffing off the cards of the moment. And so if you're talented in riffing and you have a good intuition and you do understand a few of the cues that the cards are giving, you can be pretty damned amazing with the card. But if you actually want to understand how the system is working, you know, why a given card has to mean what it means, then you need to learn the ideas behind the numbers, the ideas behind the titles, the ideas behind the suits. You know, like you have to. These are mathematical equations. Every card is an equation, and it's made up of certain core assumptions. And it's by being able to juggle those things that you find the customized meanings today.
And then weaving in the astrology along with that, and along with the numerology and the...
Well, they're not separate. They never were separate. They're only separate in our mind. You know, because of the way that it gets taught to us now. So that's why I'm, you know, having worked so hard to put the system back into coherence. Now I teach it, you know, you hear me. I don't say what I'm saying with that question mark at the end of my sentences. I don't wait to find out whether somebody agrees with me or not. You know, if I did that, I would have been intimidated right out of my skin as soon as I first stuck my neck out, because you know, my first book was universally panned and it was roasted, and I was given maybe probably 3 years of torturous negative attention at Tarot L. It was really an ordeal, but I already knew I wasn't talking through my hat. So if other people didn't know that yet, that's on them. I've just stood my ground, and you know, that's why this book 25 years later is, you know, still selling, and why I'm going to be putting it out again, because it didn't go anywhere. You know, I stood on the bedrock, and I don't have to go anywhere. It's coming to me. And so, and like I said, I'm doing this for future generations who aren't so caught up in the moment's fads. Now they'll be caught up in their moment's fads, but they'll at least have this backbone of information available to them. The same way that I had Levi and Pappas and Moni Sadu. You know, maybe nobody's going to go back and read those guys anymore, but I will be standing in the stream pointing at them.
I think there's a trend to go back and look at them re-emerging now. At least I hear more people talking about them these days.
Yeah.
It might just be that I'm entering into different pools of people, but I do hear the names more often than I did, even say 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, I think that the tides are turning, as they always do. You know, sociologists will tell you that your grandparents have to die before you'll fully appreciate what was going on in their era. You know, this really takes multiple generations going by before we get far enough away to be able to appreciate. So hopefully we're coming around now.
I think so.
It's 50 years later since my first book came out. 50 years since I started. Yeah.
A very technical question. You said I like using reversals. I don't use them in all decks because I don't think all decks and all times are lend themselves to reversals easily. And there are times when personally, emotionally, I'm not ready to look at reversals just because it takes a little bit more work. But you do recommend using reversals with your deck, and I'm wondering how you work with reversals, because I know that how you create reversals, because I know people have different ways of doing it. Some people don't intentionally shuffle in the reversals, but when they come up reversed, there's that. Other people intentionally shuffle them in. And for those who intentionally shuffle them in, each one has their own way of doing it. What is your recommendation, or what is your personal preference?
I figured out a long time ago that one of the ways that the tarot people create confusion for themselves is they don't watch their hands. You must create a standard behavior that you do with the cards, so that you don't confuse yourself when you finally break the deck and start throwing them out. So I suggest to everybody that they create a ritual in which they do at least 10 shuffles, because 78 cards is a lot to randomize. I'd much rather they shuffle them 20 or 30 enough times to where they're warm and they're flowing and they're not hanging up on each other, and then they can take the shape they need to take. And in the course of that, I have big hands, and so for me, even my big deck, I can break it in half. I will turn one half 180 degrees and shuffle it back in, and I will do that again each time. So I'm creating reversals each shuffle. But even if you do it once right at the beginning, that's enough. You know, because you just reversed half the deck in relation to the other half. So whatever it was, you've already totally changed it. The main thing is, again, just like in Las Vegas or Tahoe, you know, there are certain odds. If you don't shuffle beyond a certain point, you probably haven't broken up all the sticky clumps yet. You know, that the whole point is to change, and decks age, so that once they've been shuffled hundreds of thousands of times, they're not making new combinations anymore. There is a, you know, with 78 cards, there's a limit to how many new combinations. So I'm not saying you should throw your decks out, although I know people who will. They'll use a deck for 5 or 10 years and say, okay, this is exhausted, get this out of here, and they'll get a new copy. But I just know you want to work with the odds that are already inherent in the model of a deck of cards. And, you know, a lot of work has been done on that in these gambling parlors. So we might as well take advantage of it and really make sure everything's all warmed up and flowing, you know, your hands, your mind. And then again, before you ever do anything, write in your journal, if you have a question, write what the question is in so many words. So if your ritual is correct, so that you know what's the top and what's the bottom of the deck, and also how you take the cards off the deck matters, right? Because if you do, whimsically and you're not even paying attention, then you're going to reverse some and unreverse others, and you would just, you know, make yourself completely confused. So it's very helpful just to be ritualized, build in the considerations you need, you know, do it often enough to where you don't forget. And then when you're, you know, setting yourself up for a journal entry, just make sure you've noted, this is the deck I'm using, this is the spread I'm using, this is the question I'm asking. And then, you know, again, you're just keeping your rows and your columns in their places.
Right.
You can operate with some security that there's meaning in all the details that you find afterwards. Now, as to the usefulness of reversals in readings, I have a tendency to go with the Arabic astrologers, which is upright is going to imply events in the world, and reverse is going to imply internal events.
Okay.
So I don't read them as good and bad. I'm not interested.
I don't either. Yeah.
A lot of people do. But I do include in the book, I do include what could be some of the tougher meanings.
Right.
You know, and if people want to associate that with reversal, then they can. But, you know, really people who never read reversals still need to address the tougher meanings. Right. You know, because if a card comes up, both sides come up, you know, even if it only looks like they're all upright.
Have you ever worked with a round deck before?
Yes, of course. Yes. The Mother Piece.
Oh yeah, I love the Mother Piece. So it's from the Mother Piece, actually, that I started getting a better sense of reversals and also lefts and rights. And so for me, when I've got the upright, it's a much easier read for me because I just have this clear set of stuff. When I get into a reversal for a non-round deck, then I've got all these other corners that are all part of that. I've got the energy which is perhaps even more expansive, or an energy that is less expansive, that's retracted or repressed or striven too hard for, all dancing around in my head. And so that's why I said when I mentioned that sometimes I don't feel up to reading with reversals because there's all that other stuff to filter through.
Well, yeah, I mean, especially if you're thinking in terms of having to give yourself 20 questions, that's one of the reasons why I finally said, well, okay, when they're reversed, then it's more of an inner process. And when it's upright, it's more of an outer, more literal process.
Something out there in the world, right?
Yeah, and that others could see that it would be objectively agreed upon by other people, whereas the reverse cards are truly whatever you make of them. You know, because you're not going to discuss it with anybody, and nobody may even know you're thinking like that.
Yeah. Do you ever what they say called reset your decks, where you put them back in order and then start as if it was a brand new deck? Or
no, I don't. Although for many years I had a big studio I could use in the backyard of my old house. It was actually an 8-sided temple, Sufi temple. And so I could make big elaborate designs on the floor. I had a lot of floor space in there when I needed to. And so, you know, I was in the habit of taking my decks apart and, you know, studying them element by element, or making big displays, 15 decks, 15 King of Cups, 15 Queen of Cups, 15, you know, so that I could see what's the developmental arc of this idea.
Yeah.
But see, it all blows apart when you reach the 20th century, because everybody now wants to do something completely novel and never before seen and create a unique sensation. And so they're not necessarily building on those shared ideas that were coming, you know, for the first 500 years of Tarot, where everybody was at least standing in somewhat the same footprints and, you know, developing maybe their idea of number, their idea of suit, their idea of these ranks, but they weren't blowing it all out in all directions and doing whatever they wanted.
Speaking of which, what do you think about Eudes Picard, who focused on the minor arcana, right? I got the right person, right?
Yeah, Eudes Picard.
Eudes Picard.
Eudes Picard.
Where he switched, where he wouldn't say he switched them, but the air for cups and the water for swords.
Yeah. Again, I'm just getting that book out, so that's good that you asked.
Okay.
We're on the verge of dropping that. We're just correcting the proof copy.
Mm-hmm.
Picard is working with Arabic values. It's a very directly Arabic inspired deck, and I found the basis for all his correspondences in where is it now? Nasser's book. Islamic Cosmological Doctrines.
Okay.
So really, by Nasser, Sayed Hossein Nasser.
That's great.
So what you're working with there is the cup is actually the crystal cup. You wouldn't know this if you didn't look into Arabic civilization, but they are the people, remember, they're the ones that gave us eyeglasses. They're the crystal technologists of the Holy Land civilization. And so telescopes and microscopes and all that kind of stuff are because of their work, first with natural rock crystal, then with glass and blowing glass and cut glass. And, you know, they just learned all kinds of things, the whole properties of light and prisms. And so the suit of cups from the Arabic slant is actually the technology of crystal cutting. And it's very different. You know, you can imagine the pineal associated with this ceremonial cup. The pineal as a crystal receiving the light from above. And so cup as air means a cup of consciousness.
Yes. Okay.
Collecting impulses from the divine mind coming through the light. So really air has the associations of light and enlightenment.
Yes.
And that's all in the cups, the crystal grail. So, and then the suit of swords, the sword is the word, right? W-O-R-D is inside of sword. So, you know, that the two-edged blade that cuts both ways. And so this is what the mind does to the emotions. It gets in there and twists the knife. It gets in there, it pierces your self-solidarities and introduces doubt, creates pain, defines things in ways that will hurt your feelings or that will steal your confidence or whatever. So the suit of swords is the emotional turmoil when you get ungrounded in when consciousness goes astray and starts attacking itself. So really all decks use the suit of swords as the realm of affliction, afflict. So that isn't changed just because Picard has water there. It's just saying the affliction is deep in the depths of the soul as opposed to a fight in the world. And you see this, the four knights in Picard, none of them are wearing their helmets. And at least one of them is wearing a turban. So we're talking about returning crusaders. We're talking about people after their exposure to the incredible transformational experience of going to the Holy Land and finding out how the other half lives. And this changed Europe. These guys, when they came back, they were strangers to their own culture. They had to, you know, they introduced tea and spices and all kinds of things into Europe that only the royals had. You know, suddenly the trade got huge and Europeans got more sophisticated. So this Arabic part doesn't show up enough. We don't acknowledge it enough in the Tarot with its, you know, dripping with Europeanism.
Which is odd because we got got it from that
mammal
interaction in the first place, right?
Yeah, North Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it was the
so thanks for this gift, and yeah, go away now. We're not even going to pretend. We're not even going to remember that you gave it to us in the first place.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, after all, those were the people we were fighting against. So we had to steal everything that they had and then cast it over in our image so that we could then appreciate it and grow from it. But they've never forgiven us, and we've never, fessed up to it either. Everybody has to grow up. The world is getting very small. We can't keep pretending we don't exist.
Amen. Amen for that. So you are interested in Eudes Picard a little bit. You're doing a book on him. When are you planning on releasing that? Is there a date or?
Michael might have. Oh well, I had thought it would be out by now, but we found a few flaws when we. Let me go get it. I'll show you. Hang on. By the time you get this video out, it will probably be out.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Oh, that looks great. I love that cover.
I know. The woman who saved it for me, I was doing it with a close friend, but then she got sick with COVID and we couldn't finish. So this woman who helped me pick it up, it's just really brought it up. And it's a full color. If I can do this.
Oh, wow.
Color,
that's fabulous.
It's going to be nice. Yeah, it's very nice. And I've been working with these Spanish decks for, since I made my chart in the 80s. So I have my own experiences. Even before I discovered Nasser and Islamic cosmology, I had been building up experience with this deck. So I was able to take what limited text we have in English and put it together in a way that people could connect the dots and maybe do their own studies. I really expect other people will go much deeper than this. I specifically restricted how much I wrote for this so that I didn't, just blather on all over the surface of it, because I want Picard to speak for himself. Right. And Michael did the, we were given a copy of the black and whites, after it was reprinted. And so Michael recolored it. So the deck is now, not formally colored. He didn't do anything to try and make it look like a Marseille deck, because I don't think Picard he was breaking that model by doing naturalistic images on the minors. He wasn't holding himself to that model. But so we got that printed last year. But I really thought I would have the book out before now. We just foundered over COVID like everybody else did. So it'll be out in the next few weeks.
Oh, that's fabulous. That's great news. That is wonderful news. So are there any other systems that you work with personally? Besides?
Well, I have bunches of decks. I try and respect every deck for what the builder has put into it. But I am mostly focused on the European decks because I don't have to fight with them so hard. And I'm also relaxing as I get older and not necessarily trying to run the whole catalog in my head with every single card. So that allows me to be more fluid with a deck, even if it isn't, officially corresponded the way I would have done it. But one of the decks that I really enjoy is Tarot del Fuego, which is a wild little thing, cheap, easy to find at Amazon.com. But it's in the Marseille tradition, as far as I can tell, but it's also completely shamanic. And so when I want to not be in my head, but get feedback directly from my body and directly through symbols and images without any sense of anchoring to anything external, I use that deck, and then I ask myself, well, why did I get this? Right back to those instructions. Make up a reason why this card fell in this.
Engage that part of our intuition that is purely a holistic kind of thinking model of what is coming into my unconscious computer system, and how is it processed there?
Well,
Right?
and that particular deck, I'm not talking about the tame, pretty little Tarot del Fuego. I'm talking about that madly shamanic, hallucinogenic one. There are two with the same title, but the sensibility of that artist. Do you know which one I'm talking about? I can
yes, I think I don't think I have it, but I've seen it. Yes.
Yeah, so it's extremely lively in the way that the Spanish decks are, with extra colors and lots of special effects and layers of symbols and stuff. But see, I have a really weird sensorium. This is part of what makes me massively intuitive. I have a badly wired brain. My two sides fall apart easily. My eyes didn't come together till I was almost 60.
Okay.
So I have been blinking on and off in the ordinary world and struggling with what normal for other people, while I have all these extra synesthesia of mixed light that will set off scents that I can smell or sounds that I can hear. You know, it's just, I have a bunch of mixed up senses, and that Tarot del Fuego is very much like what it's like in my sensorium. Things are exploding, or things are suddenly ripping open and becoming something else. Or, I mean, I'm not, it's subtle now. The big thing happened after a surgery, and the anesthesia really scrambled my brain and took me almost 2 years to put myself back together. That was the change, leaving Eugene, moving to Seattle, getting my therapy, meeting Michael. All those things happened at the same time as a result of the surgery. So I'm really glad I got my stuff done with Tarot.com and that first book done, because those things have supported me through this whole coming unglued and then putting myself back together again. And all the writing that I was doing for that website was, you know, helping me climb down off the wall and calm down and remember who I was and get back in the saddle, you know. So I was really grateful for my teachers and my studies, just to reestablish my center. So there is a madly shamanic side of me that has always been with me and didn't go away just because I finally got my two eyes to come together. So I really probably understand better now how to go through the non-cognitive side. I mean, I've always had mad impressions. You know, I took a psychic development course in 1969 and just everything came on like a fountain. You know, I must have had many previous initiations in other lifetimes, because just one thing after another turned on. It was really psychedelic. And I wasn't that experimental compared to a lot of my friends with drugs, because I was already tripping and didn't understand how to make it stop. So
didn't really need them, right?
Yeah, well, they disassembled me for days instead of hours. So it was a matter of just, I had my children young, so I had other priorities. But I think it is important for us to recognize that every one of us is a synesthesiac, but some of us are more repressed than others because we were more easy to repress, or somebody got to us early, or we had a more normative nervous system, and so we weren't, you know, bursting into flames or flying into flinders all the time, you know. So they could be more normal. People who could be more normal, they didn't have to develop massive intuition just to learn how to cross the street or have have a life. So I do think in some ways that part of the reason why I'm here doing this right now with tarot, with astrology, with esotericism, is to kind of throw a butterfly net over a territory that, again, in Western civilization, we think either or. We think you are or you aren't psychic, or either you are or you aren't synesthesic. And in fact, every single person is in their own unique sensorium, and there probably are no two that match. And so the four elements are literally, you know, four worlds that each person is taking from to build their own world. And like learning how to have a common vocabulary is part of what the tarot can do for us, part of what astrology can do for us. By learning to use these things in a precise way, they can lead us to these places where we don't usually have words, or where we, you know, haven't the culture hasn't paid attention to that little corner of consciousness. So I think these tools give us permission. They give us a scaffolding that we can go as far as our own consciousness will take us, because they will, create a little ground under our feet as we go by giving us the outline of the model.
That's so cool. That is so wonderful. What about non-tarot systems? Have you ventured into things like Lenormand, Kipperkarten, anything?
A little bit Lenormand, but nothing more than that. My interest in Lenormand is the fact that she worked with Attila to work out the meanings of the minor arcana. And they started with that little petite Attila.
Petite Attila, right,
and then the Jeu de Dames, and then eventually it became the big. Again, I see that as an esoteric grid that folds very small with the Jeu de Dames and is fully unfolded with the Attila Tarot. And again, I think that the system is, again, the alphabet on the trumps, the zodiac, and the four corners on the royals, and then the decanates, the 10-degree segments of the signs spread around the minors. And that, I think, is still in common between Attila and the others. He just dressed his deck up in Greco-Roman drag and shuffled the order of the trumps. But he wasn't really leaving it behind. He was just saying, let's have a fresh statement. He's one of the first that let's break the mold. But he was working, Attila was standing between the old inherited Masonic model and the new English common Masons that were being formed in the 1700s in Europe, in England. So he had to straddle this huge controversy. Oh, I'm being paged by my patient. He had to straddle this controversy and make a deck that was suitable for all sides. Right. So that is why I think the deck is camouflaged a little bit the way it is, but also, still trying to be a tarot, still using the tarot form. Because the tarot is a Masonic construct, I think. I think the Masons kept it going, kept it from being erased out from under the Catholic Church, and gave it back to us at the end of the 1700s.
Wow, this is wonderful. This has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for this. Is there anything that you would like us to know as like a wrap up to our conversation today? Anything that you want to say?
Okay.
Just do this.
I am a workshop, a two-hour workshop on Sunday at the end of June with Katrina Wynn with her global Meetup circle, and I will be talking about the workshop I did for the Jungians this February on the Stoichiea, and I will be boiling it just down to 2 hours relevant to tarot. So I spent 3 days on it for the Jungians, but I've got 2 hours, and it's just the stuff that's specific to what we see in the tarot. So that should be fun. And if people want to check that out, they just need to go visit with Katrina Wynn at her global Meetup.
Okay. And do you have a link that I could get from you to put
Yes, I can give it to you. Yes,
cool.
It'll be
very good.
So we have to get together so you can make this video.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, well, I gotta go.
I'm sorry?
I have to go.
Okay, yes, that's wonderful. Thank you very much. Say hello to your kitty for me. And have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, dear. It was very nice to spend this time with you today. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm happy, sad, joyful, grateful, and regretful that this was the end of the interview. Speaking with Christine over this time has been a revelation, and I am grateful, blessed, and humbled. And I've grown so much through this interaction. How about you? What do you think of this deck? Do you have this deck? Do you work with it? Let me know in the comments below. Are you going to get this deck now? Let us know. Let's talk about it. I'm going to be getting this. I mean, I have the deck. I have it, actually. I haven't started working with it, but I have it. And I have a little bit of a surprise for you. There's going to be a video coming up on my channel in just a little bit to announce this officially. But I'm going to be doing a month-long dive into the Tarot of the Holy Light. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for that announcement. And yeah, this is a great deck, and I'm really excited about working with it. What about you? Comment below. Hit the like button if you haven't already, so more eyes are drawn to this video. And subscribe if you haven't subscribed. I think I told you to do that already. And share this video. Yeah, you can copy links for this video on other platforms so other people who might get information or might get something out of this video can have access to it. And friends, also, stay tuned for more information. And now, as always, I wish you love, joy, well-being, and pure awareness. Thank you.